The morning sun cast long shadows across Naval Base Norfolk's training yard as 200 sailors stood in perfect formation, their white uniforms pristine against the gray concrete. But one figure stood apart, a woman in a faded gray t-shirt and work pants, positioned deliberately away from the elite SEAL unit that dominated the center of the yard. "Look at this pathetic excuse for a sailor," Commander Garrett Thorne's voice boomed across the space, cutting through the humid Virginia air like a whip crack. His finger pointed directly at the lone woman, his face twisted with contempt. "Win! You think those ugly scars make you special? You're nothing but dead weight, dragging down this entire base." Harper Wynn stood motionless, her blonde hair tied in a high bun with loose curls framing her face that caught the morning light. Her right arm bore jagged scars running from shoulder to wrist, raised, angry marks that looked like old shrapnel wounds that never quite healed right. 200 pairs of eyes watched as Thorne circled her like a shark scenting blood in the water. The commander's boots clicked against the pavement with military precision, each step calculated to intimidate. His 6'3" frame cast a shadow that engulfed Harper's smaller form completely. 20 push-ups, now! Let's see if that mangled arm can even hold your weight, or if you'll collapse like the weak link you are. The SEALs behind him erupted in laughter, especially Sergeant Briggs Colt, whose massive frame made even other special operators look small. His arms were crossed over his barrel chest, biceps straining against his camo uniform as he watched with undisguised amusement. Harper dropped to the ground without a word, positioning herself for push-ups. Her scarred right arm trembled visibly as she began. 1. The arm shook. 2. Beads of sweat formed on her forehead. At 3, her right arm buckled completely, sending her crashing face first into the concrete. The laughter grew louder, echoing off the surrounding buildings. "Pathetic! This is why women don't belong in combat units." Briggs stepped forward and kicked dirt toward her face, the dust settling in her hair. "Stick to scrubbing decks, sweetheart. Leave the real fighting to actual warriors who can handle the pressure." But as Harper pushed herself up from the dirt, something flickered in her blue eyes. Not defeat, not humiliation, but cold calculation. Her gaze swept across the training yard in a practiced pattern, noting positions of every sailor, locations of weapons racks, distances to exits, blind spots in the formation. Her left hand unconsciously rubbed her right forearm, fingers tracing the raised scar tissue with an odd rhythm, as if checking something hidden underneath the damaged skin. Lieutenant Mason Cross, watching from the elevated officer's platform, noticed that subtle movement. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, his hands gripping the railing just a bit too hard. "Get back to the maintenance bay where you belong." Thorne dismissed her with a disgusted wave, turning his back on her completely. "Real warriors have actual work to do, not playing mechanic with rusty boats." Harper stood slowly, brushing concrete dust from her knees. She gave a single nod, her face expressionless as granite, and turned to leave. But as she walked away, her stride wasn't defeated, it was measured, controlled, each step placed with deliberate precision that only trained eyes would recognize. What Commander Garrett Thorne didn't know, what none of them knew, was that in exactly 72 hours he would be on his knees in that very same yard, blood running down his face, begging this scarred failure to save not just his life, but the lives of everyone on the base. The maintenance bay of the USS Tempest destroyer sat in relative darkness, illuminated only by harsh fluorescent work lights that flickered intermittently. Harper entered the space alone, the metallic echo of her footsteps the only sound besides the distant hum of machinery. She moved to her workstation with practiced efficiency, pulling out her inspection clipboard and beginning her rounds. Her hands moved across the destroyer's CIWS, close-in weapons system, with the kind of familiarity that came from years of experience. But it wasn't the experience of a maintenance tech. Her fingers found stress points no manual would highlight, traced vulnerability patterns that only someone who'd attacked such systems would know. She paused at a particular junction box, her scarred hand running along the wiring. There, a fatal flaw in the system's radar integration. If someone knew exactly where to strike, they could blind the entire defensive grid in seconds. Harper documented it meticulously in her report, her handwriting neat and precise despite her supposedly damaged arm. "Hey, Win!" Petty Officer Wyatt Nash appeared in the doorway, his friendly face a welcome contrast to the morning's humiliation. "Rough morning out there. Thorne's a real piece of work, isn't he?" Harper glanced up briefly. "It's fine." Wyatt moved closer, studying her as she worked. There was something about the way she folded her uniform, perfect military hospital corners that even drill instructors would admire. "You know, those scars on your arm, they're pretty uniform for shrapnel damage." Her hand instinctively moved to cover her right arm. "IED outside Kandahar, 2015. Kandahar? Wyatt's eyebrows rose. But that was a restricted zone in 2015. Only special ops were. "I was driving supply trucks." Harper cut him off smoothly, returning to her inspection. Wrong place, wrong time. But Wyatt noticed how she'd just disassembled and reassembled a complex circuit board one-handed in under 30 seconds, her left hand moving with the speed and precision of someone who'd done it under fire. "That's impressive. They teach that in supply?" Before Harper could answer, the maintenance bay doors slammed open. Commander Thorne strode in with his inspection team, their boots thundering against the metal floor. Without warning, he swept his arm across Harper's workstation, sending tools clattering across the deck. "Clean this mess up, Win. This bay is a disgrace, just like you." He snatched her inspection report before she could stop him, his eyes scanning it briefly. "What's this? You think you found a vulnerability in my ship's defenses?" He laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the walls. "Maintenance rats don't understand warfare systems." With deliberate cruelty, he tore the report in half, then quarters, then eighths, letting the pieces flutter to the oil-stained floor. "Stop wasting the Navy's time with your fantasies and stick to what you know. Cleaning up after real sailors." Harper remained silent, kneeling to collect her scattered tools. But Captain Eleanor Hayes, who'd accompanied the inspection team, quietly palmed several pieces of the torn report when Thorne wasn't looking. Her trained eye had caught something in those notes, tactical analysis that went far beyond any maintenance manual. But before we continue, if you've ever been underestimated or dismissed because of how you look, hit that subscribe button right now, because what happens next proves that the quietest person in the room often holds the most power. Trust me, when Harper's true identity is revealed, you'll understand why 200 trained SEALs ended up following orders from the woman they mocked. Don't miss a second of this incredible military thriller. Subscribe and ring the bell now. The mess hall that evening buzzed with conversation and the clatter of trays. Harper sat alone in the corner, methodically eating her meal with her left hand while her right arm rested awkwardly on the table. She'd positioned herself with her back to the wall, a habit that drew no attention from the regular sailors but would have screamed, "Operator," to anyone who knew what to look for. The relative peace shattered when Briggs Colt and 3 other SEALs surrounded her table. "Well, well, if it isn't our scarred little maintenance rat." Briggs reached down and grabbed her right arm roughly, his thick fingers pressing into the scar tissue. Harper winced, genuine pain flashing across her face. The scars were real, the nerve damage authentic, but as Briggs squeezed harder, his expression changed slightly. Through the raised scar tissue, he felt something unusual, a pattern underneath, too regular to be random damage. "What the hell?" he started to say, but Harper jerked her arm away. "Please, I'm just trying to eat," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the pain. Briggs laughed and upended her tray, sending food splattering across her uniform. "Oops. Looks like you've got another mess to clean up. That's all you're good for anyway." Lieutenant Mason Cross appeared at the table's edge, his intervention half-hearted at best. "That's enough, Sergeant. We've made our point." As the SEALs walked away laughing, Mason lingered for just a moment. His eyes met Harper's, and something passed between them. A recognition, a warning, or perhaps a threat. Then he was gone, leaving Harper alone with her spilled dinner and the curious stares of other sailors who'd witnessed the humiliation, but lacked the courage to intervene. Later that night, Harper stood watch on the destroyer's deck, her eyes scanning the dark waters of the harbor. The moon was new, leaving only starlight to illuminate the gentle waves. Most would see nothing in that darkness, but Harper's trained vision caught something others would miss: the subtle, phosphorescent wake of small boats moving without lights near the restricted zone. She reached for her radio immediately. "Control, this is maintenance watch. I'm observing unauthorized vessel movement in grid 7-3, approximately 800 meters from the submarine pens." Thorne's voice crackled back, slurred with alcohol even at 200-300 hours. "Wynn, stop wasting command's time with your paranoia, Scarface. You're seeing shadows because you're scared of the dark. Maintain radio silence, unless there's an actual emergency." Harper clicked off the radio but continued watching. 3 boats, moving in tactical formation, maintaining perfect spacing. She pulled out her personal notebook, not the official log, and sketched their positions, speeds, and approach vectors. The pattern was textbook infiltration, the kind taught in advanced warfare schools. Moving silently through the destroyer's corridors, she reached a terminal in the communications room. The space was empty at this hour, just as she'd planned. Harper's fingers flew across the keyboard, accessing databases that should have been far above her clearance level. But the credentials she entered, a ghost profile from years past, still worked. The tactical assessment filled her screen. Base defense protocols, response times, weak points in the perimeter. She cross-referenced it with what she'd observed, and the picture that emerged made her blood run cold. The base had 3 critical vulnerabilities, and the boats she'd spotted were positioned to exploit all of them. She documented everything, preparing a comprehensive report that laid out not just the threats, but the specific countermeasures needed. It was the kind of analysis that would take a team of intelligence officers days to compile, but Harper completed it in 45 minutes. Dawn brought another session of physical training. The air was thick with humidity as the sailors assembled on the training ground. Briggs, still riding high from the previous evening's harassment, decided to push further. "Win! Front and center," he barked. "Let's see if you can handle the rope climb. Or will that arm of yours give out halfway up like everything else you attempt?" The rope hung 30 feet from a steel beam, a standard obstacle that every sailor had to complete. Harper approached it slowly, making a show of favoring her left arm. She gripped the rope and began climbing, deliberately awkward, using mostly her left arm while her right barely assisted. Halfway up, she slipped, catching herself with an exaggerated struggle that drew laughter from the watching SEALs. She made it to the top eventually, but her descent was clumsy, and she dropped the last 5 feet, landing hard. "Pathetic display, Wynn," Briggs announced loudly. "This is what happens when we lower standards. People who can't pull their weight endanger everyone." But Captain Hayes, observing from the command building, noticed something the others missed. When Harper had slipped, her body had automatically shifted into a perfect recovery position, the kind of muscle memory that took years of training to develop. And her landing, while it looked clumsy, had actually dispersed the impact perfectly across her body. The morning's disruption came in the form of Admiral Sterling Pierce's surprise inspection. His convoy of black SUVs rolled through the gates at 0800 hours, sending the entire base into controlled chaos. Officers scrambled to prepare. Enlisted personnel rushed to stations, and Harper deliberately positioned herself behind a maintenance panel, keeping her scarred arm turned away from where the Admiral would pass. Wyatt found her there, tools spread around her as she worked on an electrical junction. "Big brass is here," he said unnecessarily. Admiral Pierce himself, guy's a legend, 30 years in the service, commanded SEAL Team 3 back in the day. Harper's hands never paused in their work. Good for him. "You're not even curious? I heard he's looking for someone specific, asking about personnel records from 2019. This time Harper did pause, just for a fraction of a second. "Lots of people served in 2019. Wyatt moved closer, lowering his voice. "Harper, those scars on your arm. I've been thinking. They're too perfect, too evenly spaced. Like someone was trying to remove something specific. And the way you move sometimes, when you think no one's watching, I need to finish this before noon, Harper said flatly, turning her back on him. But Wyatt had already seen what he needed to see. When her sleeve had ridden up during the work, he'd glimpsed the scars more clearly. They formed a pattern, deliberate cuts overlaying something else, like an artist trying to obscure an underlying image. The intelligence briefing that afternoon was mandatory for all senior personnel. Harper shouldn't have been there, but Captain Hayes had quietly added her name to the list, curious to see how she'd react to classified information. Mason Cross stood at the podium, his presentation smooth and professional. Signal intercepts indicate increased chatter among known terrorist cells, specifically references to Norfolk and the anniversary. NSA assessment puts threat level at amber. Thorne, nursing a hangover behind dark sunglasses, waved dismissively. Every month there's chatter. Every month nothing happens. We're the most secure naval installation on the East Coast. Sir, with respect, Harper spoke up from the back, drawing surprised looks. The patterns match pre-attack indicators from Coast and Benghazi. The terminology they're using, the sunrise gathering, that's specific to. Did I ask for input from maintenance? Thorne snarled. Know your place, Scarface. Harper fell silent, but Captain Hayes made another note. The woman had just referenced classified attack patterns that weren't public knowledge. Either she'd been reading way above her authorization, or she'd been there. The armory inspection that afternoon provided an unexpected revelation. Briggs had dragged Harper along, ostensibly to carry equipment, but really to continue his campaign of humiliation. The arms room was filled with M4 carbines, Sig Sauer pistols, and various other weapons. Hey, Scarface, Briggs called out. Bet you don't even know which end the bullet comes out of. Harper said nothing, but Wyatt, who'd been documenting inventory, spoke up. Actually, I bet she does. Come on, Harper, show them what you showed me yesterday. Harper shook her head. That was nothing. She assembled an M4 blindfolded, Wyatt announced. 18 seconds with just her left hand. The room went quiet. Briggs's eyes narrowed. Nonsense. Nobody can do that one-handed. It was just muscle memory from basic, Harper said quickly. Lucky timing. Do it again, Briggs commanded, pulling an M4 from the rack and disassembling it completely. Right now. Both hands this time, since you claim that arm works. Harper hesitated, then moved to the table. She picked up the lower receiver with her left hand, then reached for the trigger assembly with her right. Her scarred fingers fumbled, dropping the small component. She tried again, movements deliberately clumsy, taking nearly 2 minutes to complete what should have taken 30 seconds. See? Briggs laughed. Lucky timing, my ass. She can barely function with that mangled arm. But Master Chief Sullivan Reed, the armory supervisor, had been watching carefully. He'd seen her deliberately install the trigger spring backwards, then correct it when she thought no one was looking. He'd seen her fingers move in patterns that spoke of intimate familiarity with the weapon. And most telling, she'd performed a functions check that wasn't taught in basic training, but was standard in special operations. Wyatt pulled out his ruggedized military smartphone, the kind used by field operators for its encrypted communication capabilities and enhanced durability. The device's camera, designed to capture evidence in combat zones, had been recording Harper's every move. These tactical smartphones, with their thermal imaging capabilities and satellite connectivity even in remote locations, were standard issue for intelligence gathering. The 50x zoom and night vision modes made them perfect for surveillance operations. I'm documenting everything for the readiness report, Wyatt said, reviewing the footage on the shatterproof screen. The device's 72-hour battery life meant it could record continuously, capturing details that would prove crucial later. These things can see through anything, he muttered, zooming in on Harper's scarred arm. Through the enhanced camera, the scars showed an unusual pattern, too deliberate, too precise to be random shrapnel damage. That evening, Harper made her way to the communications center again. The duty officer was asleep at his post, a dereliction she noted but didn't report. She needed the terminal access more than she needed to maintain military discipline. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up satellite imagery from the past week. The patterns were there if you knew how to look. Vehicles pre-positioned, personnel moving in ways that suggested reconnaissance, suspicious gatherings at specific coordinates. She compiled it all into a detailed threat assessment that would have made any intelligence analyst proud. Couldn't sleep either? Harper spun to find Captain Hayes standing in the doorway. The older woman's expression was unreadable as she approached the terminal. "Ma'am, I can explain. That's a classified system requiring top-secret clearance," Hayes observed mildly, "which a maintenance tech shouldn't have. Yet here you are, conducting analysis that my intelligence team hasn't even started." She leaned closer, studying the screen. "This is exceptional work. Where did you learn to read satellite intel?" "YouTube," Harper said with a completely straight face. Hayes actually smiled. "Right, and I learned ship command from Netflix." She pulled up a chair. "Show me what you found." Over the next hour, Harper walked Hayes through her analysis, careful to couch her expertise in terms of hunches and lucky guesses. But Hayes wasn't fooled. Every observation was precise, every conclusion supported by evidence that only trained eyes would spot. "There's going to be an attack," Harper said finally. "Within the next 72 hours, probably during the morning shift change when our guard rotation is thinnest. They'll hit the ammunition depot first to create chaos, then the communications array to prevent coordination, and finally the submarine pens." "How can you be so specific?" Harper met her eyes. "Because it's what I would do." The next morning's events began to validate Harper's warnings. Dawn Patrol reported multiple fast boats approaching from 3 directions, exactly as she'd predicted. The message reached the command center at 0545. Thorne, stumbling from his quarters reeking of bourbon, could barely stand straight. His uniform was disheveled, his eyes bloodshot. "It's probably just fishing boats," he slurred. "Stand down." "Sir, they're maintaining attack formation," the duty officer reported urgently. "Speed 30 knots, heading directly for restricted waters." Mason Cross stepped forward smoothly. "Commander Thorne appears to be indisposed. I'll assume temporary command." But before anyone could respond, explosions rocked the base. The ammunition depot erupted in a fireball that shattered windows a mile away. Emergency sirens wailed as personnel scrambled for battle stations. All units, the radio crackled. "We are under attack. Multiple hostiles breaching perimeter." Harper was already moving. She found Wyatt taking cover behind a concrete barrier, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. Without hesitation, she grabbed him with her left arm and hauled him to the medical station, showing strength that seemed impossible for her size. "Corpsman," she called out. But the medical bay was chaos. Without waiting, she grabbed a field kit and went to work. Her hands, both hands, moved with practiced efficiency. She cleaned the wound, checked for concussion symptoms, and applied a pressure bandage using techniques that definitely weren't in any basic first aid manual. Captain Hayes, coordinating defense from a nearby position, watched Harper work. The woman was using combat lifesaver techniques specific to special operations, procedures designed to stabilize casualties when no medic was available. "Where did you learn that?" Hayes demanded. "Gray's Anatomy," Harper replied without missing a beat, finishing the bandage. Gunfire erupted from the north gate. Briggs's squad was pinned down, taking heavy fire from superior positions. Harper could see their predicament from the medical station window. They were sitting ducks. She closed her eyes, visualizing the geometry of the battlefield. Angles, distances, cover positions. It all crystallized in her mind like a 3-dimensional chess game. "They need to displace 30 meters southeast," she said seemingly to herself. "There's a defilade position that gives them covering fire on the enemy's flank." Hayes grabbed her radio. "Briggs, move your squad 30 meters southeast. There's cover there." "Negative. We'll be exposed." Harper snatched the radio. "Sergeant, trust me. Sprint on my mark. Suppressing fire in 3, 2, 1, mark." Whether from desperation or instinct, Briggs obeyed. His squad sprinted for the position Harper had identified, just as enemy fire shifted to follow them. They dove into cover as bullets sparked off concrete inches behind them. "How the hell did you know?" Briggs gasped over the radio. Harper didn't answer. She was already moving toward the weapons locker, Hayes close behind. The reinforced door required an authorization code, which Harper somehow knew. "That's a classified override," Hayes said sharply. "How do you—" "Lucky guess?" Harper offered, pulling an HK-416 rifle from the rack. Her weapon selection was specific, methodical, not the random grabbing of a panicked sailor, but the careful choice of an operator selecting tools. The rifle, the particular SIG P226 pistol, the specific combat knife, all SEAL Team 6 standard issue. If you're feeling that tension building, smash that like button, because Harper's about to show these arrogant SEALs what real combat experience looks like. The way she handles what comes next will leave you speechless. And remember, every like helps more people discover stories of underdogs who become legends. Thorne stumbled into the command center, trying to assert authority through his alcoholic haze. "I'm in command here. Everyone needs to—" "Sir, respectfully, you're drunk," Captain Hayes said bluntly. "Stand aside. I'll have you court-martialed." An explosion closer than the others shook the building. Through the smoke, figures in tactical gear advanced on the command center. At least 30 hostiles, well-armed and coordinated. Harper studied their movement patterns. These weren't random terrorists. They moved like trained soldiers, using overlapping fields of fire and coordinated advances. Someone had given them inside information about the base's defenses. "They know our positions," she said quietly to Hayes. Someone told them exactly where to hit. Mason Cross appeared at her shoulder. "Interesting observation from a maintenance tech." His hand rested on his sidearm. "I wonder what else you've observed." Harper met his gaze steadily. "Just that we need to establish interlocking fields of fire here, here, and here." She pointed to positions on the tactical map. Basic geometry. But the positions she'd identified weren't basic at all. They were sophisticated kill zones that would channel attackers into predetermined areas. The kind of tactical setup taught in advanced warfare schools. Mason's eyes narrowed. "I know those scars are hiding something. What's underneath, Harper?" "Old wounds," she replied. "They heal in strange ways, Lieutenant." Before Mason could respond, another wave of attackers breached the inner perimeter. Harper moved without thinking, her body operating on pure muscle memory. She flowed into a shooting position, the rifle becoming an extension of her will. But she was careful, too careful. Her shots were effective but not exceptional. Good enough to help but not good enough to reveal her true capabilities. She favored her left arm, obviously, making her stance look awkward, even as every bullet found its mark. Admiral Pierce's voice crackled over the emergency frequency. "This is Admiral Pierce. I'm trapped in the admin building with 6 personnel. Request immediate extraction." Thorne, in a moment of drunken bravado, grabbed the radio. "All units, frontal assault on the admin building. We're going straight through them." "That's suicide," Briggs protested. "We'll be cut down before we get halfway." Harper stepped forward. "There's another way." She moved to the tactical board, sketching out a flanking maneuver with practiced ease. "If we create a diversion here, a small team can infiltrate through the maintenance tunnels. They emerge behind enemy lines here, neutralize the heavy weapons, and extract the admiral." "How do you know about maintenance tunnels that aren't on any schematic?" Mason asked suspiciously. "I work maintenance," Harper said simply. "I know every pipe and passage on this base." Hayes made the command decision. "Do it. Harper, you guide the team." As Harper prepared to move out, she activated her radio out of habit. "Ghost 7 to Overwatch." She caught herself, but it was too late. Eleanor Hayes's fingers were already flying across her tablet, searching for Ghost 7 in the classified database. The search returned a single result, but accessing it required Admiral-level clearance or higher. Mason, meanwhile, stepped away from the group. He pulled out an encrypted phone, not standard military issue, and typed a quick message. Harper caught the movement in her peripheral vision, her instincts screaming that something was wrong. The team moved through the maintenance tunnels, Harper leading with a confidence that belied her supposed inexperience. In the darkness, with only tactical flashlights for illumination, she navigated turns without hesitation. "How can you see?" Briggs whispered. "I can barely make out the walls." "I've been down here before," Harper lied. In truth, she was reading subtle signs, airflow, temperature variations, sound echoes, the way she'd been trained to navigate in total darkness. They emerged exactly where she'd predicted, behind enemy lines. The hostiles had set up a heavy machine gun position that was keeping the admin building pinned down. Harper studied the situation for exactly 3 seconds before moving. Briggs, put suppressing fire on their left flank. Nash, you're with me. She moved like water, flowing from cover to cover. Her supposedly damaged right arm seemed forgotten as she operated with both hands, though she caught herself and deliberately fumbled her next magazine change. The extraction was textbook. Suppress, advance, neutralize, secure. Within 4 minutes, they had Admiral Pierce and his staff moving back through the tunnels. Pierce looked at Harper in the dim light, his weathered face unreadable. Outstanding work, sailor. What's your name? Maintenance Specialist 3rd Class Wynn, sir. His eyes lingered on her scarred arm. Wynn. I knew a Wynn once. Colonel in Special Operations. You wouldn't be related to James Wynn, would you? Harper's expression never changed. Common name, sir. But Pierce wasn't convinced. As they moved through the tunnels, he stayed close to her, observing. The way she checked corners, the way she held her weapon, the way she moved in perfect tactical spacing. It all screamed special operator. They emerged from the tunnels into chaos. The command center was under direct assault. Thorne had completely broken down, curled in a corner, mumbling incoherently. Mason was nowhere to be seen. Where's Lieutenant Cross? Hayes demanded. Haven't seen him, someone replied. Harper knew. The encrypted phone, the suspicious timing, the way he'd been watching her. Mason was the insider. But she needed proof. The main assault came in waves. Harper positioned herself at a crucial defensive point, her rifle barking steadily. She was running low on ammunition when she noticed something. The attackers were avoiding a particular approach route. Why leave that path open unless... Captain Hayes, she called out. They're leaving the south approach open on purpose. They want us to retreat that way. It's a trap? It's a funnel. They'll have another force waiting. Hayes's tablet finally cracked the classification on Ghost 7. Her face went pale as she read the fragmentary data. Harper, this file. It says Ghost 7 was part of an operation in Kandahar. The only survivor of... An explosion cut her off. The wall behind Harper erupted, showering her with debris. When the dust cleared, she was facing 15 hostiles alone, separated from the rest of the defenders. This was the moment. She could die maintaining her cover, or she could live and reveal everything. Harper made her choice. Her entire demeanor changed in an instant. The hesitant, damaged maintenance tech vanished, replaced by something lethal. She moved through the hostiles like a force of nature, every motion economical, every shot precise. Her supposedly damaged right arm worked in perfect harmony with her left. Wyatt, watching through security cameras from his hidden position, could barely process what he was seeing. Harper took down 5 attackers in 10 seconds, using a combination of firearms and close-quarters combat that was pure artistry. She grabbed one attacker's weapon as he fell, dual-wielding now, creating overlapping fields of fire that shouldn't have been possible for one person. Another hostile tried to flank her. She spun, drove her knee into his solar plexus, seized his knife, and threw it 20 feet into another attacker's shoulder. The security footage would later show something impossible. One woman, supposedly injured and incompetent, single-handedly stopping an assault that should have required a full squad. Briggs arrived with reinforcements just in time to see Harper execute a perfect tactical reload while using a downed hostile as cover. Holy hell, Wynn, what are you? She didn't answer, focused entirely on the battle. But in the melee, an enemy blade found her right arm, slicing deep along the existing scars. Blood flowed freely, and with it, the carefully maintained deception began to crumble. The wound was deep, cutting through the raised scar tissue like it was following a hidden map. As Harper pressed her left hand against it to stem the bleeding, Briggs saw something that made his blood run cold. Beneath the blood and damaged tissue, something dark showed through. Lines. Patterns. Ink. Your arm, he breathed. Mason Cross chose that moment to reappear, but not alone. He had 10 more hostiles with him, and his weapon was trained on Harper. "Hello, Harper," he said with a cold smile. "Or should I say, Lieutenant Wynn, Ghost Unit 7. Yes, I know exactly who you are." Eleanor's tablet beeped urgently. The classified file had fully loaded, and her sharp intake of breath was audible even over the gunfire. "Lieutenant Harper Wynn, SEAL Team 6, Ghost Unit 7. Missing in action. Presumed killed in action. August 2019. Kandahar Province. Sole survivor of Operation Nightshade." "That's impossible," Thorne said, suddenly sober from shock. "Ghost 7 is a myth. A legend." Mason laughed. "Oh, she's very real. The woman who held off 40 Taliban fighters for 17 hours. The operator who completed her mission even after her entire team was killed. The ghost who disappeared into the mountains and was never found." He gestured at her bleeding arm. "They tried to cut that famous tattoo off her arm when they captured her, didn't they? The viper and skull that marks Ghost Unit. But Harper here turned those torture scars into the perfect disguise." Harper stood slowly, blood still running down her arm. The cut had split the scar tissue like a seam, and through the blood, everyone could now see glimpses of black ink. Intricate tattoo work partially visible through the damaged flesh. "They did try," Harper said quietly, her voice different now, harder, colder. "They wanted to take my identity, my honor, so I let them think they succeeded. I added to their work, made the scars worse, turned their torture into my camouflage." Wyatt's camera captured everything as Harper deliberately pressed on the wound, forcing the edges apart. The false scar tissue, carefully built up over years, separated to reveal the truth beneath. The tattoo was magnificent and terrible. A viper coiled around a human skull, its fangs bared in eternal threat. The snake's body wound down her entire forearm, scales rendered in exquisite detail. It was the mark of SEAL Team 6's most elite unit, Ghost Squadron, given only to those who had survived the impossible. "The Kandahar Ghost," Briggs whispered, his weapon dropping to his side in shock. You're really her, the one who killed those 40 Taliban fighters?" Mason finished. "Yes, but that's not the whole story, is it, Harper? Tell them what you found in those mountains. Tell them why you had to disappear." Harper's eyes never left Mason's. "You were there. You were supposed to be our backup. I was there to clean up loose ends. You weren't supposed to survive, Harper. None of Ghost Unit was. You discovered something you shouldn't have, our little arrangement with certain interested parties." Admiral Pierce's voice cut through the radio static. "Ghost 7, this is Admiral Pierce. Authentication Protocol Alpha 779. Harper responded without hesitation. "Ghost 7 confirmed. Authentication Tango 779. The Sparrow flies at midnight, the Eagle hunts at dawn." "Authentication confirmed. All units. Lieutenant Wynn is now Tactical Command. I repeat, the Ghost has operational command." The transformation in the room was immediate. Sailors who had mocked her hours ago stood straighter. SEALs who had dismissed her as worthless looked at her with awe. The Ghost of Kandahar wasn't just a legend. She was standing in front of them, bleeding but unbroken. Eleanor's tablet displayed Harper's full military record, finally unlocked. The commendations were staggering. Navy Cross, Silver Star, Bronze Star with Valor, Purple Heart ×3. Operations in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Yemen. Languages spoken, 7. Specializations, too many to list. "Every time you mocked these scars," Harper said, her voice carrying to every defender, "you reinforced my cover. Every insult, every moment of harassment, it all helped me maintain my mission." "Which was?" Thorne asked, his voice small. "Finding the traitor in our ranks, the one selling our positions to enemies." She looked directly at Mason. "Hello, old friend. I've been waiting 3 years for this moment." Mason's smile faltered. "You knew?" "I suspected. That's why I came here, why I buried myself under scars and humiliation. Every base you were assigned to had security breaches. Every operation you were part of had inexplicable failures. But I needed proof. She pulled out a small device from her pocket, a recording unit that had been running since she'd arrived at Norfolk. Every conversation, every encrypted message you sent thinking you were safe, every meeting with your handlers, I have it all. Mason raised his weapon. Then you'll die with that knowledge. But Harper was already moving. Despite her injured arm, despite the blood loss, she flowed like water. The knife appeared in her hand as if by magic, the same SEAL-issue combat blade she'd selected from the armory. It flew through the air, striking Mason's weapon hand with surgical precision. His gun clattered away as he screamed. Harper was on him in an instant, her scarred and tattooed arm pressed against his throat. You betrayed Ghost Unit. You got my team killed. You sold out your country for money. It wasn't about money, Mason gasped. It was about power. The people I work for, they're going to change everything. The old order is dying, Harper. A new world is coming. Not today. She applied pressure until he passed out, then zip-tied his hands with restraints that materialized from her pocket. The remaining hostiles, seeing their inside man defeated and facing the legendary Ghost of Kandahar, began to retreat. But Harper wasn't done. Briggs, take your team through the East Tunnel. Cut off their escape. Nash, coordinate with base security to lock down the gates. Hayes, get me a direct line to JSOC. She moved through the battlefield like a maestro conducting a symphony of violence. Every order was perfect. Every tactical decision flawless. The same woman they'd called dead weight that morning was now commanding the entire defense with an expertise that left seasoned officers in awe. Within 40 minutes, the attack was repelled. The hostiles were either captured or neutralized. The base was secure. As the adrenaline faded, Harper finally allowed herself to show weakness. She slumped against a wall, her injured arm cradled against her chest. The tattoo was fully visible now, the viper seeming to move in the flickering emergency lights. Briggs approached cautiously, then did something unexpected. He knelt. Ma'am, what I did, what I said, I'm sorry doesn't even begin to cover it. Stand up, Sergeant, Harper said tiredly. You didn't know. But I should have seen it. The way you moved, the things you knew. You saw what I wanted you to see. That was the point. Admiral Pierce arrived, his uniform dusty but his bearing still commanding. Lieutenant Wynne, that was extraordinary work. Just doing my job, sir. Your job was supposed to be finished 3 years ago when you died in Kandahar. He studied her carefully. Why maintain the deception so long? Harper looked at Mason's unconscious form. Because I knew the rot went deep. Mason was just one tendril. There are others, Admiral. A network that's been selling out our operations for years. And your father? Colonel James Wynne? Harper's expression tightened. That's a different mission, sir. Captain Hayes approached with a medical kit. Let me look at that arm. As Hayes cleaned the wound, everyone could see the full tattoo clearly. It was a work of art and a mark of honor, made more powerful by the real scars that surrounded it, the ones from where Harper's captors had tried to destroy it. They held you for how long? Hayes asked quietly. 6 days. They wanted to know the location of our forward operating base. They tried to cut the tattoo off to break me, to take away my identity. Harper's voice was matter-of-fact. They failed. So you escaped, completed the mission alone, then vanished? I had to. I discovered evidence of the conspiracy during the mission. If I'd returned officially, they would have killed me. So Ghost 7 died in those mountains, and Harper Wynne, the maintenance tech, was born. Thorne, now completely sober, approached hesitantly. I called you worthless. Dead weight. You were an ass, Commander, but you weren't a traitor. That's something. Eleanor's tablet chimed. She read the message and her face paled. Harper, this is from JSOC. It's marked Priority 1. Harper took the device, read the message, and her expression went blank. I have to go. Go? You're injured. You need medical attention. This is about my father. She stood, ignoring the pain. He's been found. Admiral Pierce stepped forward. Colonel Wynne is dead, Lieutenant. He was killed in action 5 years ago. No, sir. He was taken. And now, Harper looked at the message again. Now someone's using him as bait. They want me to come alone. That's obviously a trap. Yes, but it's also an opportunity. The network Mason mentioned. They're behind this. They know I'm alive now, so they're making their move. She looked around the room at the people who had mocked her, dismissed her, tormented her. Now they looked at her with respect, admiration, and not a small amount of fear. You all have your orders. Secure the base, process the prisoners, and prepare for potential follow-up attacks. She moved toward the door, her bearing completely different from the submissive maintenance tech she'd pretended to be. Wait, Briggs called out. You're not going alone. Not after. Let us help. Let me help. I owe you that much. Harper paused at the door. You owe me nothing, Sergeant. I chose this path. But why? Wyatt asked. Why suffer all that humiliation when you could have just conducted your investigation openly? Harper turned back, and for the first time, she smiled. A real smile, not the calculated expressions she'd worn for months. Because real strength isn't about showing your power. It's about knowing when to hide it. Every one of you who dismissed me, who saw only the scars and not the soldier, you taught me something valuable. What's that? Admiral Pierce asked. That the most dangerous person in the room is often the one nobody notices, the one willing to be underestimated, the one who can turn weakness into strength. She looked at her scarred and tattooed arm, the viper still seeming to writhe in the light. They tried to take this from me, to strip me of my identity. Instead, they gave me the perfect disguise. Every scar tells a story, but not always the story you think. This is it, the moment everything changes. If your heart is racing, hit subscribe because the revelation about to drop will blow your mind. You think you know who Harper is? Think again. The truth is more shocking than anything you've imagined. Subscribe now to see more military mysteries revealed. Eleanor's secure tablet buzzed with another urgent message. This time her face went white as she read it. Harper, you need to see this. The screen showed a classified intelligence photo, grainy but clear enough. It depicted a man in his 60s bound to a chair, obviously tortured but alive. Colonel James Wynne. But what made Harper's blood run cold wasn't his condition. It was what was visible on his exposed arm. Or rather, what wasn't visible. Where the Ghost Unit tattoo should have been, there was only mutilated flesh. Someone had carved it off, taking the entire section of skin. They're collecting them, Harper said quietly, her voice filled with a cold fury that made everyone step back. The tattoos from Ghost Unit members. But why? Another message appeared on the screen. We have 7. You'll make 8. Come alone or he dies. You have 72 hours. The coordinates followed. A location in the mountains of Afghanistan, not far from where Harper had died 3 years ago. Admiral Pierce grabbed her arm, the scarred one. You can't go. This is bigger than one person, bigger than your father. We need to finish what I started 3 years ago, Harper interrupted. Sir, with respect, I've been dead for 3 years. I've endured humiliation, isolation, and constant pain to protect this country. I'm not stopping now. Then you're not going alone, Captain Hayes said firmly. We're coming with you. This isn't your fight. You made it our fight when you saved our lives, Briggs interrupted. When you took our mockery and still protected us. We were wrong about you, ma'am. Let us make it right. Harper looked around the room. These people who had dismissed her, who had seen her as worthless, were now ready to follow her into hell. The transformation was complete, but not in the way she'd expected. You don't understand what you're volunteering for, Harper said. The people holding my father, the ones collecting Ghost Unit tattoos, they're not just terrorists. They're something worse. They're insiders, traitors at the highest levels. People who've been playing a long game that makes Mason's betrayal look like child's play. Then we expose them, Wyatt said, still recording everything on his tactical smartphone. We have the evidence, we have you, and now we have a team. Harper was quiet for a long moment, studying each face. Then she nodded slowly. All right. But we do this my way. Hayes, I need everything you can find on Ghost Unit members who've died in the last 5 years. Specifically, check if their bodies were recovered intact. Nash, pull satellite imagery of these coordinates for the last month. Look for patterns, vehicle movements, anything unusual. She turned to Briggs. Sergeant, you and your team are going to need specialized training. What I'm about to teach you isn't in any manual. It's Ghost Unit tactics, things that officially don't exist. Ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And Commander Thorne, Harper said, turning to the man who'd tormented her most. You're going to dry out and get your act together. I need you functional in 72 hours or you stay behind. Thorne straightened, something like hope flickering in his bloodshot eyes. Yes, I'll be ready. As the room burst into activity, Harper stood still for a moment, looking at her exposed tattoo. The Viper's eyes seemed to gleam with promise or threat. Mason, now conscious but restrained, laughed weakly from his position on the floor. You have no idea what you're walking into, Harper. The people I work for, they're everywhere. Pentagon, CIA, NSA. You can't fight them all. Harper knelt beside him, her scarred arm inches from his face. Watch me. She stood and addressed the room one more time. 3 years ago I died in those mountains. Ghost 7 ceased to exist. But sometimes, the dead don't stay buried. Sometimes they come back to finish what they started. She moved to the tactical planning board, her movements now openly displaying the fluid grace of an elite operator. We have 72 hours to prepare for an operation that doesn't exist, against enemies who officially aren't there, to save a man who's supposedly been dead for 5 years. The scarred and tattooed arm that had been hidden for so long now pointed at strategic positions on the map. This is what we're going to do. As Harper began outlining the mission, transforming from scorned maintenance tech to legendary special operator, everyone in the room understood that they were witnessing something extraordinary. The ghost of Kandahar hadn't just survived. She'd turned her greatest trauma into her greatest weapon. But the real revelation was yet to come, because Harper's father wasn't just being held as bait. The collected tattoos weren't trophies. They were a key. And Harper was about to discover that everything she thought she knew about Ghost Unit, about her father, about the conspiracy she'd uncovered, was only the beginning of something much larger and more terrifying than anyone could imagine. The secure phone in Admiral Pierce's pocket buzzed. He answered it, listened for a moment, then handed it to Harper with a grave expression. The voice on the other end was electronically distorted but familiar somehow. Hello, Lieutenant Wynne, or should I say, the last ghost. We've been waiting for you to reveal yourself. The game can finally begin. Who are you? Someone who knows the truth about Ghost Unit, about what you really are, about why those tattoos matter. Your father started to piece it together. That's why he had to disappear. The line went dead, leaving Harper staring at the phone. Around her, the team continued their preparations, unaware that they were about to embark on a mission that would change everything they thought they knew about modern warfare, loyalty, and the price of secrets. Harper's scarred arm flexed unconsciously, the Viper tattoo seeming to coil tighter. 3 years of hiding, of enduring humiliation and pain, had led to this moment. But the real test wasn't the physical danger ahead. It was the truth waiting to be uncovered. Eleanor Hayes appeared at her shoulder with a medical report. Harper, I've been reviewing the medical files you had sealed. The scars on your arm. Some of them are newer than Kandahar, aren't they? Harper nodded slowly. I had to make it convincing. Every few months I'd add to them, deepen them, make sure nobody would ever think to look beneath. You mutilated yourself to maintain your cover. I did what was necessary. Just like, I'll do whatever's necessary to get my father back and expose this conspiracy. The room had transformed into a war planning center. Maps covered every surface, satellite images streamed on multiple screens, and weapons were being cleaned and checked. The same space where Harper had been mocked that morning was now her command center. Briggs approached with a tactical vest. Ma'am, we've modified this for your arm. Extra protection around the scarring, but still allowing full range of motion. Harper took it, noting the careful consideration in its design. Thank you, Sergeant. Ma'am, what I said this morning, about women not belonging. You were wrong. But you know that now. I do, and I'll spend the rest of my career making sure nobody else makes the same mistake. As preparations continued, Harper found herself alone for a moment at a window, looking out at the training yard where everything had started. Her reflection showed both versions of herself, the submissive maintenance tech and the elite operator, somehow combined into one person. Wyatt appeared beside her, his camera still recording. This is going to be one hell of a story. No, Harper said firmly. This story doesn't exist. None of this happened. The official record will show that terrorists attacked the base and were repelled by brave sailors and SEALs. Nothing more. But people should know, people should sleep safely in their beds, not knowing how close they come to disaster every day. She turned to him. That's what we do, Nash. We fight in the shadows so others can live in the light. If Harper's revelation gave you chills, you need to subscribe right now because the next video reveals another hidden warrior among us. A female sniper who disappeared for 10 years only to return and save the president. Hit subscribe and the bell icon so you don't miss these incredible stories of hidden heroes walking among us. Admiral Pierce called everyone to attention. Listen up. In 70 hours we deploy for a mission that doesn't exist. You've all volunteered for something that won't appear in any record, won't earn you any medals, and might get you killed. Anyone wants out. Now's the time. Nobody moved. Good, Harper said, stepping forward. The transformation was complete now. She stood with the bearing of the warrior she'd always been, no longer hiding behind scars and submission. Then let's begin. We have a ghost to save and a conspiracy to destroy. But as she turned to the tactical board, Eleanor's tablet received one more message that would change everything. The sender was listed as Ghost 1. Impossible, since Ghost 1 had died 10 years ago. The message was simple. The 8 marks unite to reveal the truth. The Viper knows the way. Trust no one, not even the dead. Harper read it, her scarred hand trembling slightly, because she recognized the code phrase at the end. It was something only her father would know, something he'd told her the day she joined Ghost Unit, which meant either Colonel James Wynne was still alive and trying to communicate, or someone had extracted that information from him before he died. Either way, Harper was walking into something far more complex than a simple rescue mission. The collected tattoos, the conspiracy, the network of traitors. It all pointed to something that went back to the very founding of Ghost Unit itself. As the hours ticked down toward departure, one thing became crystal clear. The ghost of Kandahar's war wasn't ending. The 72 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Harper stood in the armory at 0300 hours, methodically checking her gear one final time. The HK-416 rifle had been cleaned and zeroed, the SIG P226 loaded with hollow points, and her combat knife, the one that had saved her life in Kandahar, sharpened to a razor's edge. Her scarred arm moved with practiced efficiency, the Viper tattoo now fully visible, no longer hidden beneath false tissue. Captain Eleanor Hayes entered quietly, carrying a tablet with the latest intelligence. We've identified 17 Ghost Unit operators who died in the last 5 years. In every case, the bodies were recovered with specific injuries. The tattoo area was surgically removed. Harper's jaw tightened. 17. Plus my father makes 18. There were only 24 of us total. Which means 6 are still out there, including you. No, Harper said quietly, checking the magazine and her pistol. Ghost 1 died 10 years ago. That message had to be fake. Unless Ghost 1's death was staged, like yours. The possibility hung in the air between them. Harper had assumed she was the only one who'd gone underground, but what if others had done the same? What if the entire Ghost Unit had been systematically hunted, not just killed but harvested? Briggs appeared in the doorway, his SEAL team assembled behind him. They'd spent the last 3 days learning tactics that weren't supposed to exist, movement patterns designed by Ghost Unit for operations that never officially happened. Ma'am, the team's ready. Transport arrives in 30 minutes. Harper nodded, then turned to address the assembled operators. 24 people had volunteered for this mission. Sailors and SEALs who'd mocked her days ago now stood ready to follow her into the unknown. "Listen carefully," she began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd led such missions before. "Where we're going, the rules don't apply. The enemy knows we're coming. They want us to come. That means every advantage is theirs: terrain, numbers, preparation. All we have is surprise." "Surprise?" Thorne asked. He'd managed to sober up, though his hands still shook slightly. "They're expecting us. They're expecting a rescue mission. They're not expecting what we're actually going to do." Harper pulled up a holographic map on the tactical display. "The coordinates they gave us are here. A compound in the Hindu Kush Mountains, 15 clicks from where I supposedly died. But we're not going there." Confusion rippled through the group. Nash raised his hand. "But your father?" "My father's not there. He never was." Harper zoomed in on a different location. Mason's encrypted communications included references to a collection point. I cross-referenced that with satellite imagery and found this: a black site facility that doesn't exist on any map. That's where they're keeping the ghost unit tattoos. That's where my father is. "How can you be sure?" Hayes asked. Harper touched her scarred arm. "Because the message said, 'The Viper knows the way.' In Ghost Unit, each operator's tattoo was unique. Mine has the Viper. My father's had an eagle. Ghost 1 had a wolf. But there's something else. Something only Ghost Unit members knew." She pulled out an ultraviolet light and shined it on her tattoo. Under the UV, additional markings became visible. Coordinates tattooed in special ink that only showed under specific light wavelengths. Every Ghost Unit tattoo contains the location of our emergency rally point. A place so classified it doesn't have a name, just a designation. Point Omega. That's where they're collecting the tattoos, trying to piece together the full location from partial coordinates on each one. "Why?" Briggs asked. "What's at Point Omega?" Harper was quiet for a moment. "Something that was never supposed to be found. Something Ghost Unit was created to protect." The C-130 transport rumbled through the night sky, its cargo hold filled with operators checking weapons and reviewing mission parameters. Harper sat apart from the others, studying intelligence reports on her tablet. The image of her father, tortured but alive, burned in her mind. Wyatt approached with his ruggedized smartphone, still documenting everything despite Harper's warnings about classification. "Ma'am, I've been analyzing the pattern of Ghost Unit deaths. They weren't random. Someone was hunting them in a specific order." Harper looked at his data. He was right. The deaths followed a pattern that only made sense if you knew Ghost Unit's internal hierarchy. They were working their way up the chain of command, saving the leadership for last. Which means your father and Ghost One were primary targets. And I was supposed to be dead, so I didn't factor into their plans. Harper handed back the device. "Good work, Nash. You would have made a good intelligence analyst." "Would have? This mission doesn't exist, remember? After tonight, none of us were ever here." The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "Approaching drop zone in 10 minutes. Prepare for halo insertion." Harper stood, and the entire team followed suit. High-altitude, low-opening jumps were dangerous, even in perfect conditions. At night, in mountainous terrain, with potential hostiles waiting, it was borderline suicidal. "Remember," Harper said as they lined up at the door, "we go in dark and silent. No radio contact until we're on target. If someone doesn't make the rally point, we continue mission. Clear?" "Clear, ma'am," they responded in unison. The ramp opened, revealing nothing but darkness and howling wind. Harper looked back at her team one more time. These people who'd dismissed her, who'd seen only weakness where strength was hidden. Now they were trusting her with their lives. She stepped into the void. The fall was endless and instant simultaneously. Harper's scarred arm ached in the cold air rushing past at terminal velocity, but she kept her body position perfect. Around her, 23 other operators fell like deadly rain toward the mountains below. At 800 feet, she deployed her chute. The silk whispered open, jerking her from 120 miles per hour to nearly stationary in seconds. She guided herself toward the designated landing zone, a narrow valley that provided the only concealed approach to the facility. Her boots hit the ground with practiced silence. Within minutes, the entire team had assembled, their black tactical gear making them nearly invisible in the moonless night. "Nash, get me satellite overlay," Harper whispered. Wyatt's tablet illuminated briefly, showing real-time thermal imaging of the facility 2 kilometers away. "I count 42 heat signatures. Guards posted here, here, and here. But there's something else. An underground section that's shielded from thermal." "That's where they'll be," Harper said. "The collection." They moved through the darkness like ghosts themselves, using the terrain for cover. Harper led from the front, her movements sure despite the treacherous ground. Every step was calculated, every breath controlled. At 500 meters from the facility, she held up a closed fist. The team froze. Through her night vision, Harper could see the guards clearly. They were professionals, former military by their bearing, well-equipped and alert. But there was something else, something that made her blood chill. One of the guards turned toward their position, and she saw his arm. Even from this distance, she could make out the scarred tissue where a tattoo had been removed. "They're using former Ghost Unit operators," she whispered to Hayes. "People who were reported KIA but were actually turned. That's impossible. Ghost Unit operators would never, unless they had no choice." Harper's mind raced through the implications. What if the conspiracy goes back further than we thought? What if some Ghost Unit members were compromised from the beginning? Before anyone could respond, an explosion rocked the mountain. But it wasn't at their position. It was at the coordinates Harper had been given originally, 15 kilometers away. "They're hitting the decoy location," Briggs whispered. "Who?" Harper smiled grimly. "Backup I didn't tell you about. Well, they're distracted by that. We move." The assault was swift and brutal. Harper's team hit the facility from 3 sides simultaneously, using the Ghost Unit tactics she'd taught them. Guards fell before they could raise alarms, taken down by suppressed weapons and silent blade work. Harper moved through the facility like death incarnate. Every corner, every room, every hostile encountered was processed with mechanical efficiency. Her scarred arm showed no weakness now, working in perfect harmony with the rest of her body. They reached the underground entrance, a heavy steel door that required biometric access. Harper didn't hesitate. She pressed her palm against the scanner, and to everyone's surprise, it opened. "How did—" Thorne started. "My biometrics are still in the system. They never removed them because they thought I was dead." Harper moved into the stairwell. "Or because someone wanted me to get in." The underground facility was a maze of corridors and reinforced rooms, but Harper moved unerringly toward her goal, following instincts honed by years of training. They encountered minimal resistance. Most of the guards had responded to the decoy attack. Finally, they reached a heavy vault door. Through the small window, Harper could see him, Colonel James Wynne, bound to a chair but alive. Around him, displayed on the walls like trophies, were squares of preserved skin, each containing a Ghost Unit tattoo. "Breaching," Briggs announced, placing charges on the door. "Wait," Harper said, something nagging at her. It was too easy. After all this preparation, all this security, why was the final approach so simple? Her instincts screamed danger, but they had no choice. Breach! The explosion tore the door from its hinges. Harper was first through, weapon raised, scanning for threats. The room was clear except for her father and the grotesque display of tattoos. "Harper," Colonel Wynne's voice was weak but clear. "You shouldn't have come." She moved to him quickly, cutting his bonds with her knife. "I couldn't leave you. You don't understand. This was all—" The lights suddenly blazed to full brightness, temporarily blinding everyone. When Harper's vision cleared, she found herself facing someone she'd never expected to see. Ghost One stood in the doorway, very much alive. The wolf tattoo was still visible on his arm, untouched by scars or removal. Commander Jacob Stone, the founder of Ghost Unit, the man who'd supposedly died 10 years ago in Iraq. "Hello, Harper," Stone said calmly. "Welcome to the truth. You're supposed to be dead. Death, like everything else in our world, is a tool, a useful fiction when needed. Stone entered the room, and Harper noticed her team's weapons hadn't moved to track him. They were frozen, uncertain. "Stand down, Ghost 7, Stone commanded, using her official designation. "The war you think you're fighting isn't the one that's actually happening. You're the traitor. You've been collecting Ghost Unit tattoos, hunting your own people." "No, Harper. I've been protecting them. Every Ghost Unit operator who died is actually alive, relocated, given new identities. The tattoos we removed were to prevent exactly what you think is happening. Someone piecing together the location of Point Omega." Harper's mind reeled. "That's impossible. I saw the bodies, the reports. You saw what you were meant to see, just like everyone else." Stone gestured to the preserved tattoos on the walls. "These are fake, Harper. Decoys to make our enemies think they're close to finding Point Omega." "Our enemies?" Colonel Wynn stood shakily, supported by Harper's arm. "Tell her the truth, Stone, all of it." Stone's expression hardened. "Ghost Unit was never just about special operations, Harper. We were created to guard something specific, something recovered in Afghanistan in 2001. Before the war even officially started. What kind of something? The kind that changes everything. Technology, but not from any nation we know. Point Omega is where it's kept, where it's been studied. The coordinates in our tattoos, when combined, reveal its location, but only when all 24 are together." Harper looked at her father, seeking confirmation. He nodded slowly. "It's true, Harper. I discovered the truth 5 years ago. That's why I had to disappear. Not because I was captured, but because I was recruited into the real mission." "Then Mason was a patriot," Stone interrupted. "He was helping us identify the actual traitors, the ones trying to steal the technology." His arrest at Norfolk was staged to maintain his cover. Harper's world tilted. Everything she'd believed, everything she'd fought for in the last 3 days, was built on lies. If this is all true, why the elaborate deception? Why let me suffer for 3 years thinking you were dead? "Because you were being watched," her father said. "The moment you survived Kandahar, you became a target. The only way to protect you was to let you disappear, to become someone else. But we always knew you'd eventually surface. We counted on it. You used me as bait." "We used you as a weapon," Stone corrected. "A weapon against the real enemy." Before Harper could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Hayes checked her tablet urgently. "We've got incoming. Military vehicles. Looks like a full battalion." "That would be our friends from the Pentagon," Stone said calmly. "The ones who've been trying to steal Point Omega's secrets for their own purposes. They've been monitoring this operation, waiting for us to reveal ourselves." So this whole thing, my reveal at Norfolk, the attack coming here, was anticipated and planned for. Harper, you're not just a Ghost Unit operator. You're the key to everything. Your tattoo, specifically, contains the master override code for Point Omega's security. That's why they tried so hard to cut it from you in Kandahar. Harper looked at her scarred arm, the Viper tattoo that had caused her so much pain. "Why me?" "Because you were the only one I truly trusted," Stone said. "The only one I knew couldn't be turned, no matter what they did to you. Your psychological profile, your training scores, your operational record, everything pointed to you being incorruptible." The sound of helicopters grew closer. Harper had to make a decision. Trust the man she'd thought was dead, or fight against everyone. "If what you're saying is true, prove it," she demanded. "Show me Point Omega." Stone smiled slightly. "I was hoping you'd say that." He pulled out a device Harper had never seen before, crystalline, almost organic in appearance. When he activated it, the air itself seemed to shimmer. "This is from Point Omega. A small sample of what we're protecting." The device projected a hologram of Earth, but with technology overlaying it. Orbital platforms, energy networks, defensive systems beyond anything currently possible. "This is what humanity could become," Stone said, "but also what could destroy us if it falls into the wrong hands. Every war, every conflict in the last 20 years has really been about controlling this technology." The helicopters were landing outside now. Harper could hear boots on the ground, orders being shouted. "We need to go," Briggs said urgently. Whatever side we're on, we can't fight a battalion. But Harper wasn't listening. She was staring at the hologram, at the implications of what she was seeing. Then she noticed something. A pattern in the orbital platforms that matched the arrangement of scars on her arm. The scars, she breathed. The torture in Kandahar. They knew about the pattern. Yes, her father confirmed. The enemy has pieces of the puzzle. That's why we had to hide you, make them think you were irrelevant. Harper, Stone said urgently, we need your decision. Come with us to Point Omega, help us protect this technology until humanity is ready. Or stay here and let them capture you, extract what they need from your tattoo, and potentially doom our species. The door burst open. Military personnel flooded in, weapons raised. Harper recognized some of them. Pentagon officials she'd seen in classified briefings, CIA operatives from joint operations, but their eyes were cold, purposeful. Lieutenant Wynne, the lead operative said, by order of the Secretary of Defense, you're under arrest for treason, terrorism, and theft of classified materials. She's done none of those things, Stone said calmly. Commander Stone, you're supposed to be dead. Death, as I recently told Lieutenant Wynne, is a useful fiction. Harper felt the tension ratcheting up. 24 weapons were pointed at them, and her team was drastically outnumbered. But she also noticed something. Briggs and his SEALs had subtly shifted position, ready to fight if she gave the word. These people who had mocked her, dismissed her, were now ready to die for her. I need to know, Harper said to the lead operative, what you intend to do with the technology. The operative's expression didn't change. That's classified. Then you get nothing from me. We don't need your cooperation, Lieutenant. We just need your arm. The threat was clear. They would cut the tattoo from her if necessary, just like the enemy in Kandahar had tried. But this time, it would be her own government doing it. Harper made her choice. Her movement was so fast that most people didn't see it. The smoke grenade from her vest detonated, filling the room with thick gray clouds. In the chaos that followed, Stone's device activated again, and the air shimmered more violently. Portal opening! Someone shouted. They're using the technology. Through the smoke, Harper could see a tear in space itself, a doorway to somewhere else. Stone was already pushing her father through it. Harper, now! Stone commanded. But Harper hesitated. Her team was still here, still in danger. She couldn't abandon them. Go, Hayes shouted. We'll hold them. That's not your job. It is now. Hayes raised her weapon, laying down suppressing fire. You taught us that real strength is knowing when to hide it. Well, now we know when to show it. Go. Briggs and his team formed a defensive line, their weapons chattering in controlled bursts. Ma'am, with all due respect, get your scarred ass through that portal. Harper looked at them one last time. These brave souls who'd found their courage when it mattered most. Then she dove through the portal. The sensation was indescribable, like being torn apart and reassembled simultaneously. When it ended, Harper found herself in a facility unlike anything she'd ever seen. The walls were a blend of metal and something else, something that seemed to pulse with its own light. Through massive windows, she could see they were underground, but the cavern was vast, containing structures that defied conventional architecture. Welcome to Point Omega, Stone said. Around them, Harper saw other figures emerging from the shadows. She recognized them all. Ghost unit operators who'd supposedly died over the years. They were all here, all alive, all protecting this impossible place. This is what we've been guarding, her father explained, his arm around her shoulders. Technology from elsewhere. A gift or a curse, depending on how it's used. The tattoos, Harper said, understanding finally dawning. They're not just coordinates, they're access codes, genetic markers. The technology responds to us specifically. You always were the smartest one, Stone said approvingly. Yes, Ghost Unit wasn't just selected for our skills. We were chosen for genetic compatibility with the technology. The tattoos are biomarkers that allow us to interface with it. Harper walked to one of the walls, and it responded to her presence. lighting up with displays she couldn't read but somehow understood. The viper tattoo on her arm glowed slightly, the ink reacting to whatever energy permeated this place. "How long has this been here?" "Since 1947, Stone answered. "Roswell wasn't a weather balloon, Harper. It was first contact, but not the kind people think. The beings who crashed weren't invaders, they were refugees. They gave us this technology as payment for sanctuary, then disappeared into human society. And the government has been hiding it ever since?" "Some parts of the government. Others want to weaponize it. That's the real war we've been fighting, not against foreign enemies, but against our own people, who would use this to dominate rather than elevate." Harper thought about the team she'd left behind, about Hayes and Briggs and the others fighting to give her time to escape. "We have to go back for them." "We will," Stone promised. "But first, you need to understand your role here. Your tattoo, Harper, contains the master key. You're not just a guardian, you're the guardian, the one who can fully activate Point Omega's systems." "Why me specifically?" her father answered this time. "Because you're my daughter, and I'm not entirely human." The words hung in the air like a physical weight. Harper stared at her father, looking for signs of deception or madness, but his eyes were clear, serious. "The refugees," he continued, "some of them integrated into human society, had families. Our family, Harper, carries their genetic markers. It's diluted over generations, but it's there. That's why you could survive what happened in Kandahar, why you heal faster than normal, why the technology responds to you." Harper looked at her scarred arm with new understanding. The torture hadn't just been about removing the tattoo. They'd been testing her, seeing if she had the genetic markers. "So I'm, what, part alien?" "Your evolution," Stone said. "The next step in human development. There are others like you, scattered across the world, most unaware of their heritage, but you're the strongest we've found." A communication panel lit up nearby. Stone activated it, revealing Eleanor Hayes's face. She was bloodied but alive. "Ma'am, we've secured the facility. The Pentagon forces withdrew when they realized the portal was closed, but they'll be back with more resources. Are you all safe? Few injuries. Nothing critical. Briggs wants to know when you're coming back for us." Harper looked at Stone, who nodded. "We can open limited portals for extraction, but once they're here, they can't leave. Not until this is over." "What if they don't want to stay?" "Then we modify their memories and send them back. But something tells me they'll choose to stay. You've given them purpose, Harper. Something worth fighting for." Harper made the decision. Bring them through. All of them. Over the next hour, her team was evacuated to Point Omega. Each person's reaction to the truth was different. Awe, fear, excitement, disbelief. But all of them chose to stay once they understood what they were protecting. Thorne, completely sober now and seeming 10 years younger, approached Harper. "I owe you an apology." "1,000 apologies. The way I treated you. You saw what I wanted you to see, Commander. No apologies necessary. Still, I was cruel. Unnecessarily so." Harper surprised him by smiling. "You were an excellent antagonist. Your disdain was so genuine it convinced everyone I was really just a maintenance tech. In a way, you helped maintain my cover." As the team settled into their new reality, Stone gathered everyone for a briefing. The main chamber of Point Omega filled with personnel. Not just Ghost Unit, but scientists, engineers, support staff who'd been living here for years. "The outside world is about to change," Stone announced. "Our enemies know we exist now. They'll come for us with everything they have. But we have something they don't. Purpose beyond nationalism or profit. We're protecting humanity's future." He gestured to the alien technology surrounding them. "This could give us unlimited energy, faster than light travel, medical advances that would seem like magic. Or it could create weapons that would make nuclear bombs look like firecrackers. The choice is ours." "What's the plan?" someone asked. "We accelerate the timeline," Stone replied. "Originally, we planned to reveal this technology gradually over 50 years. Now we have perhaps 50 days before our enemies force our hand." Harper stepped forward. "I have a different idea." Everyone turned to her. The woman who'd been mocked and dismissed days ago now commanded absolute attention. We don't hide anymore, she said. We don't wait for them to come to us. We take this public. Complete transparency. Show the world what we're protecting and why. That would cause panic or hope, Harper countered. People are ready for the truth. They know something's been hidden from them. If we reveal it on our terms, we control the narrative. Stone considered this. It's risky. Once the technology is public knowledge, every nation will want it. Then we share it, equally. No one country gets advantage over another. The Pentagon will never agree to that. Harper's scarred arm flexed unconsciously, the viper tattoo seeming to coil tighter. The Pentagon doesn't get a vote. This technology belongs to humanity, not to any government. Her father spoke up. She's right. We've been guardians long enough. It's time to be teachers. Admiral Pierce, who'd been extracted along with the others, added his voice. I've served my country for 30 years, but this is bigger than any one nation. Harper's plan could work. Stone looked around the room, gauging the mood. Slowly, heads began nodding. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. All right, Stone said. We go public, but we do it smart. Harper, you'll be the face of this. Your story, the persecution, the revelation, the discovery. It's compelling. People will listen to you. When? 72 hours. We need time to prepare, to secure our allies in various governments. Not everyone in power is corrupt. Some have been waiting for this moment. Wyatt raised his hand. I've been recording everything. With your permission, I can create a presentation that will be impossible to dismiss as fake. Harper nodded. Do it. But include everything, the good and the bad. People need to know the full truth. As the meeting dispersed, Harper found herself alone with her father in an observation room, looking out over the vast underground city that was Point Omega. I'm proud of you, Colonel Wynne said quietly. You've become everything I hoped and more. You could have told me about what we are, what I am. Would you have believed it? Without seeing this place, without understanding the stakes. Harper touched the glass, and it responded to her genetic signature, displaying information in a language she didn't recognize but somehow understood. What happened to them? The refugees. They're still here, scattered among humanity. Teachers, doctors, artists, living normal lives while slowly helping us evolve. You might have met dozens without knowing it. And our family? Your grandmother was one of them. She fell in love with my father, had me, and then returned to the stars when her mission was complete. Harper absorbed this information, her entire life recontextualizing itself. The things that had never quite made sense, her unusual resilience, her ability to process information faster than others, her instinctive understanding of complex systems. It all fit now. Eleanor Hayes approached with a tablet showing global intelligence reports. The Pentagon is mobilizing. They're calling it a terrorist incident, saying we've been compromised by foreign agents. Expected, Harper said. What about our allies? British intelligence is asking questions. The Russians are staying quiet but moving assets. The Chinese are openly curious. If we're going public, we need to do it before someone decides to nuke us just to keep the secret. Harper looked at the assembled team, her team now. They'd followed her through mockery, through battle, through revelation. Now they stood ready to change the world. Wyatt, how long until your presentation is ready? 48 hours for something comprehensive. Then we go live in 48 hours. Harper turned to Stone. Can the technology protect us until then? Point Omega has defenses you can't imagine. We could hold off the entire world's military for months if necessary. Admiral Pierce immediately authorized Harper's enrollment in the Advanced Tactical Law Program database. These specialized military legal education services, designed for operators transitioning to command roles of unprecedented scope, would be crucial for what came next. The courses covered not just rules of engagement, but international law, treaty obligations, and frameworks for introducing paradigm-shifting technology to the world. Such programs, typically reserved for the highest levels of military leadership, would prepare Harper for the complex legal and ethical decisions ahead. "Ma'am," Briggs approached, his entire demeanor different from the bully who'd tormented her days ago. "The men want to know what our role is in this. We're soldiers, not diplomats." "Your protectors," Harper replied. "When this goes public, there will be those who try to steal the technology, to use it for dominance rather than advancement. We'll need every skilled operator we can get. Then we need to train. This technology, can it enhance our capabilities?" Stone answered, "Yes, but carefully. The biological modifications possible here could create super soldiers, but at the cost of humanity. We've seen what happens when the technology is misused." "Kandahar," Harper said, understanding dawning. "The 40 Taliban fighters. They weren't normal. Enhanced with stolen prototype technology. That's why you were the only one who survived. Your genetics allowed you to match their capabilities." The implications were staggering. Harper realized that conflicts around the world might have been influenced by this hidden war over alien technology. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Harper worked with Wyatt to craft a message that would resonate globally. She trained with the technology, learning to interface with systems that responded to thought as much as touch. Her scarred arm, once a source of shame and pain, became her primary interface tool, the Viper tattoo glowing with increasing brightness as she mastered each new system. Mason Cross was released from custody and brought to Point Omega. His reunion with Harper was awkward but necessary. "I'm sorry for the deception," he said. "Pretending to be a traitor, letting you think." "You played your role perfectly," Harper interrupted. "Too perfectly. Part of me still wants to break your nose." Mason actually smiled. "Fair enough. But we needed someone inside the conspiracy, someone they'd trust. And you found what? Names. Hundreds of them. Government officials, military leaders, corporate executives, all part of a network trying to monopolize the technology. They call themselves the Prometheus Group." "Original," Harper said dryly. "They're dangerous, Harper. When you go public, they'll try to assassinate you. You'll be target number one." "I've been a target before." She flexed her scarred arm. "I survived." As the hours counted down to the revelation, Harper stood before a camera in Point Omega's communication center. Behind her, displays showed the alien technology in action. Healing devices curing cancer, energy systems powering entire cities, transportation that defied physics. "Ready?" Wyatt asked from behind the camera. Harper nodded. She'd faced enemy fire, torture, humiliation, and betrayal. But this, telling the truth to 7 billion people, this was the hardest thing she'd ever done. "My name is Lieutenant Harper Wynne, United States Navy, SEAL Team 6, Ghost Unit 7. 3 days ago you knew me as a failed maintenance technician, mocked and dismissed by my peers. Today, I stand before you with a truth that will change everything." She held up her scarred arm, the Viper tattoo clearly visible. "These scars were meant to hide something extraordinary. Not just my identity, but my purpose. For 20 years, a select group of soldiers has been protecting the greatest secret in human history." The presentation continued for 2 hours. Harper told everything: the crashes, the refugees, the technology, the conspiracies to control it. Wyatt's footage provided irrefutable proof. Scientists at Point Omega demonstrated technologies that shouldn't exist. Around the world, reactions varied from disbelief to panic to wonder. Governments scrambled to respond. The Prometheus Group activated their contingency plans. But something unexpected happened. The refugees, the ones living hidden among humanity, began revealing themselves. Teachers, doctors, engineers, artists, coming forward to confirm Harper's story. They showed subtle biological differences, enhanced neural pathways, modified DNA, abilities beyond human normal. But they were peaceful, helpful, wanting only to guide humanity forward. The President of the United States, after 18 hours of silence, finally responded. Lieutenant Wynne's revelations, while shocking, have been verified by multiple sources. Effective immediately, Point Omega and its technology will be placed under international oversight, with equal access for all nations. The Prometheus Group's response was less diplomatic. Within hours of Harper's broadcast, 3 assassination attempts were made on her life. Each failed, stopped by the enhanced defenses of Point Omega and the dedication of her team. But the 4th attempt was different. Harper was in the medical bay, having her scarred arm examined by the facility's advanced systems, when alarms began blaring. Not external alarms, internal ones. "Breach in Section 7!" someone shouted. That was impossible. Section 7 was the most secure part of Point Omega, where the core technology was housed. No one could. "Harper!" Her father's voice over the intercom, desperate. "It's Ghost 1. Stone is Prometheus." The betrayal hit Harper like a physical blow. Stone, the founder of Ghost Unit, the man who'd brought her here, who'd revealed the truth. He was the enemy? She ran toward Section 7, her team converging from all directions. They arrived to find Stone standing before the core, a crystalline structure that pulsed with alien energy. He had something in his hand, a device Harper didn't recognize. "I'm sorry, Harper," Stone said, not turning around. "But humanity isn't ready for this. They'll destroy themselves." "So you decide for everyone?" "Someone has to." The refugees were naive, thinking humans could handle this responsibly. I've spent 40 years watching, waiting, planning. The Prometheus Group isn't about controlling the technology. It's about destroying it. That's insane. Stone finally turned, and Harper saw that his wolf tattoo was glowing, but not like hers did. It was wrong somehow, corrupted. "I'm not entirely human either, Harper. But unlike you, I'm from the other group. The ones who followed the refugees here. The ones who wanted to conquer, not help." Another revelation. Another layer of deception. Harper's mind raced through the implications. The enhanced Taliban in Kandahar. My experiment. Testing hybrid soldiers. You were never supposed to survive that, but your genetics were stronger than anticipated. You killed my entire team. I killed soldiers. Necessary sacrifices for a greater good. Harper's scarred arm burned with sudden pain. The viper tattoo was reacting to something, warning her. She understood instinctively. Stone was about to destroy the core, and with it, all the technology that could help humanity. "Briggs flanking positions," she ordered quietly. "Hayes, can you access the emergency protocols?" "Already on it," Eleanor replied through her earpiece. Stone smiled sadly. "It won't work, Harper. I designed those protocols. I know every contingency." He raised the device. "This will overload the core. The explosion will be visible from orbit. The world will think it was an attack gone wrong, and the technology will be lost forever. Except for what you've already stolen. Insurance. The Prometheus Group has enough to maintain control, but not enough to threaten the established order." Harper stepped forward slowly. "You're wrong about humanity." "Am I?" "Look at your own experience. The moment you showed weakness, they attacked you, mocked you, tried to break you. And then they stood by me when it mattered. People can surprise you, Stone. They can be better than you expect." Pretty words, but I've made my choice. Stone activated the device. Immediately, the core began pulsing erratically, energy cascading in dangerous waves. The walls started to crack, reality itself seeming to bend around the unstable technology. "Everyone out," Stone commanded. "You have 3 minutes before this entire facility implodes." But Harper didn't move. Instead, she walked toward the core, her scarred arm extended. "Harper, no!" her father shouted. "The radiation will kill you." "Maybe," Harper said, "or maybe not." She pressed her palm against the core. The viper tattoo blazed with light, and suddenly Harper could feel everything. The entire network of alien technology spread across the earth, waiting. She could feel the refugees, the hybrids, even Stone's corrupted presence. But more importantly, she could feel the core's pain. It was alive in a way, sentient, and it was frightened. "I won't let him hurt you," Harper whispered to it. The response was immediate. Energy flowed through her, not destructive but purposeful. Her scars began to glow, each one becoming a conduit for power. The corruption Stone had introduced was being purged, cleaned away by Harper's unique genetics and pure intention. Stone tried to pull her away, but Briggs and his team were on him, restraining the traitor who'd manipulated them all. "You don't understand," Stone shouted. "They'll weaponize it. They'll destroy everything." "No," Harper said, her voice carrying despite the chaos. "We'll teach them, guide them, trust them." The core's pulsing stabilized, the cracks in reality sealed. The crisis passed, but Harper remained connected to the technology, seeing possibilities she'd never imagined. She saw humanity's future, not perfect, but bright. Cities powered by clean energy, diseases eliminated, exploration of the stars. There would be conflicts, setbacks, those who would try to abuse the power. But there would also be heroes, teachers, guardians who would stand against the darkness. When she finally stepped back from the core, Harper was changed. Her scarred arm no longer hurt. The Viper tattoo had transformed, now incorporating elements of alien script that told the story of two species becoming one. Stone, restrained and defeated, looked at her with something like respect. "You're stronger than I was. Maybe you're right about humanity. We'll find out together," Harper said. "Your knowledge is too valuable to waste in a cell. You'll help us, teach us, under supervision, of course." "You're forgiving me? After everything?" "I'm giving you a chance to earn forgiveness. There's a difference." The world changed that day. Not instantly, not without problems, but it changed. The technology was shared freely, administered by an international coalition that Harper helped establish. There were those who tried to steal it, weaponize it, control it. But there were always guardians standing ready. The new Ghost Unit, expanded beyond any single nation, protecting humanity's future. Harper stood on the surface above Point Omega 6 months later, looking out at the construction beginning on humanity's first interstellar vessel. Her scarred arm, now a badge of honor rather than shame, rested easily at her side. Briggs approached, now her second in command. "Ma'am, we've got the new recruits ready for assessment." "How many?" 300, all volunteers, all genetically compatible to some degree. Harper smiled. "From 24 to 300, and growing every day. Let's go meet them." As they walked toward the training grounds, Wyatt intercepted them with his ever-present camera. "Commander Wynne, any words for the documentary?" Harper considered, then looked directly into the lens. 3 years ago, I hid my strength under scars, pretended to be weak to protect a secret. Today, we hide nothing. We are humanity's guardians, its teachers, its future, and we're just getting started." She turned to the assembled recruits, men and women from every nation, every background, united in purpose. "Welcome to Ghost Unit," she announced, her voice carrying across the field. "You're about to learn that everything you thought you knew about strength, about power, about humanity itself, was only the beginning." The sun set behind her, casting long shadows across the training ground. But for the first time in years, Harper didn't see darkness approaching. She saw dawn. The Mars colony ship UES Kandahar prepared for departure from Earth's orbital station. Harper stood on the bridge, now Admiral Wynne, her scarred arm resting on the command console. The Viper tattoo, evolved and enhanced, interfaced directly with the ship's hybrid technology. "All systems nominal," Captain Hayes reported from her station. 3,000 colonists aboard, supplies for 10 years, and the new terraforming equipment. "The first of many journeys," Harper replied. Through the viewport, Earth hung like a jewel against the void. It had survived the transition, not without scars, not without conflicts, but it had survived and thrived. The Prometheus group had been dismantled, its members either imprisoned or reformed. The technology had lived up to its promise, solving problems that had plagued humanity for millennia. But more importantly, humanity had lived up to Harper's faith in it. "Admiral," a young ensign approached nervously. "There's someone here to see you." Harper turned to find a familiar face, one of the sailors who'd mocked her that morning at Norfolk, a lifetime ago. He was older now, wearing civilian clothes, carrying a small child. "I wanted to thank you," he said simply. "My daughter, The medical technology saved her life. If you hadn't revealed the truth, hadn't fought for transparency. Harper knelt down to the child's level. The girl, perhaps 4 years old, looked at her with curious eyes. "What's your name?" Harper asked. "Harper," the girl said shyly. "Daddy named me after you." Harper's scarred hand gently touched the child's head, and for a moment, the viper tattoo glowed softly. The child giggled, reaching out to trace the patterns. "She's compatible," Harper said quietly to the father. "When she's older, if she chooses, there will be a place for her here." The man nodded, understanding. His daughter might one day join the new ghost unit, the guardians of humanity's expansion into the cosmos. As they departed, Briggs approached with a tablet showing tactical assessments. "The Chinese colony ship is requesting permission to accompany us to Mars. Granted, we go together, or not at all. The Russians are asking about the Jupiter mission. Tell them we'll discuss it at the coalition meeting." Harper looked around the bridge at her crew, humans, hybrids, and even a few full refugees who'd chosen to reveal themselves. They worked together seamlessly, united in purpose. Her father appeared on the communication screen from Point Omega. "Harper, we're detecting something. Deep space signals. They're responding to our broadcasts. Friendly? Unknown. But they're coming." Harper felt no fear, only anticipation. Humanity had passed its first test, proven itself worthy of the technology. Now came the next challenge. "Let them come," she said. "We'll be ready." She turned to address her crew, her scarred arm raised, the evolved viper tattoo glowing with alien light. "Prepare for departure. Destination, Mars. Mission, establish humanity's first interplanetary colony and prepare for first contact protocols." "Yes, Admiral," they responded in unison. As the Kandahar engaged its hybrid engines, bending space-time in ways Einstein never imagined, Harper thought about the journey that had brought her here. From a mocked maintenance tech to humanity's guardian, from hiding her strength to displaying it proudly. The scars remained, but they no longer defined her as weakness. They were proof of survival, of transformation, of the power that comes from turning pain into purpose. The ship entered hyperspace, carrying 3,000 souls toward humanity's future. Behind them, Earth continued its transformation. Ahead lay infinite possibilities, and somewhere in the vast cosmos, other civilizations watched and waited, curious about this young species that had overcome its divisions to reach for the stars. The ghost had become the guardian. The hunted had become the guide. And the story, the real story, was just beginning. Through the observation deck, young Harper watched the stars streak by, her hand pressed against the transparent aluminum. In that moment, Admiral Harper Wynne made a silent promise. This child, and millions like her, would inherit a universe of possibilities, not limitations. The viper on her arm seemed to agree, pulsing once with warm light before settling into its watchful stillness. Humanity had graduated from its cradle. Now it was time to soar,